Speaking of memories, as some of you know, a lot of my a lot of my life experience arises in my mind in terms of both poems and pop tune lyrics that have been buried there in my mind. And as I was preparing this BBC, I was trying to come up with a lyric that I actually found out that I was recalling incorrectly. What was in my mind was this line from, I knew it was a Joni Mitchell song that in my head was going, "Life in the city can make you crazy, life in the city is fine." That's not exactly the lyric. But anyway, in my life at Sravasti Abbey, the tune often comes into my head. Life in community makes you crazy. Life in community is fine. It's a sweet little life in the community makes you crazy. And so I was thinking like, oh, life in community makes you crazy. Life in community is fine. And how wise the Buddha was in, really asking us to live together. Because it's not so hard to sit quietly, deepen your breathing, calm your body. I mean, it's not all that easy, but after a while you can do that. And then somebody walks in and asks you, "Where's the blah, 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 blah?" Or, "How come you did the blah, 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 blah?" Or, "Why did you do it this way?" Or, "How come you didn't do it last week?" Or, "Here's another problem and it's your responsibility." And, that calmness is not so easy to maintain. And so if indeed one of the concluding verses that we recite in our Pratimoksha recitation of the Vinaya every 2 weeks, one of the first verses, oops, I gave my book away and now I've lost my place. No, not your fault. Well, it's one of the very first ones of these closing 7 Vinayas that says basically, patience is the greatest virtue. One who annoys others cannot really call themselves a renunciant. There's another line in there. Patience is the greatest virtue. One who annoys others cannot call themselves a renunciant. Well, if patience is the greatest virtue, then living in the community is the greatest way to cultivate patience, because life in the community makes you crazy. And life in community is fine. So even as I was preparing this morning, I had a lot of thoughts coming and going and sources I wanted to use, and then I was getting not just interrupted by this community, but by my online community as well. People needing this, and this mistake was made, and this needs to be corrected. And I'm just thinking, it's not just life in monastic community, it's life in life. One of the chief things that brings our anger up is what? Other people. This was a teaching Venerable Children gave recently. It was like, oh yes, other people are the things that we respond to. And yet, as I was looking at Thich Nhat Hanh's book on anger, it's the reminder that people are not the problem. What are the causes? What is the real direct cause of anger in my mind? What? It's not you. What is it? It's the seed. I have the seed of anger in my mind. I have the seed of anger in my mind. And I also have self-cherishing. I also have the self-grasping that makes the self-cherishing arise. I have all kinds of habits that lead me to be irritated when my happiness is thwarted. And so there's, all the aspects and issues around anger get played out day by day by day, especially in community life in relationship with other people. So one of the things that I wanted to just share is this kind of wonderful story that comes from the Samutta Nikaya. It's a story that Buddha was telling to someone named Bharadvaja. And the story goes like this. Angry and displeased, Bharadjava the abusive approached the Buddha and abused him, reviled him with rude, harsh words. When he finished speaking, the Buddha said, "What do you think, Brahmin? Do your friends and colleagues, kinsmen and relatives, as well as guests, come to visit you?" "Sometimes they do come to visit, Master Gotama," he said. "Do you then offer them some food or meal or a snack?" "Sometimes I do, Master Gotama." "But if they do not accept it from you, then to whom does the food belong?" Who do you think? If we offer the food and the guest doesn't accept it, who does it belong to? "If they do not accept it from me," he said, "then the food still belongs to me." So the Buddha said, "So too, Brahmin, we," meaning the monastics, "who do not abuse anyone, who do not scold anyone, who do not rail against anyone, refuse to accept from you the abuse, scolding, and tirade that you let loose at us. It still belongs to you, Brahmin. It still belongs to you." Got it? Okay. Brahmin, one who abuses his own abuser, who scolds the one who scolds him, who rails against the one who rails at him, he is said to partake of the meal, to enter upon the exchange. Meaning, when someone's anger provokes my anger or evokes my anger or causes it to arise, and I lash back, I've eaten that meal. I am part of this conversation. "But we do not partake of your meal," the Buddha said. "We do not enter upon exchange. Therefore, it still belongs to you, Brahmin." And then he said these verses. "One who repays an angry man with anger thereby makes things worse for himself. Not repaying an angry man with anger, one wins a battle hard to win." So we talk about antidotes to anger, and we need to practice them, if I may say so. The voice of an angry person, you all know it. The antidotes need to be applied like constantly. It's not like I can wait until I get irritated to think, oh, I better think loving, kind thoughts about this jerk who just interrupted me for the 7th time today, or whatever my irritation is. At that point, it's useless. But to actually make the time every day in my very precious meditation time that's already too short because I don't have enough time to get everything in that I want to do, plus the things I'm committed to do, to also stop and think a kind thought about everybody in the community. The more this community grows, the longer this thing gets. It's getting to be a hassle. Irritated mind, right? People are thwarting my happiness. I'd rather meditate on something else. But I know in my own mind, if I don't do this, then the irritation around life in the community makes me crazy. Comes up so easily. And so this thing about not responding with anger, it doesn't mean that we shut down and like stonewall ourselves. That's still anger. But even the antidote to try to train ourselves, oh, and you know I'm quick, to try to train ourselves to breathe 30 seconds, 30 seconds before this smart mouth opens up would save so much suffering. So much. Even that little bit of training. But then also to recognize that we are all in this boat together. There is no one here who has conquered this affliction. Our teacher is well on the way and is an extraordinary example, I do believe. But everyone else, we're all working with it. So both to hold each other in compassion, recognizing that we all have it, recognizing that we all deal with it in different ways, that we all express it in different ways. Some people's expression is more tolerable than others, depending on our personality. But somehow this idea of learning to just not take it, it's yours. I don't have to refuse it in an angry way. I don't need to say, this meal is just so bad I'm not going to eat it. I can just say, thank you, I'm not hungry. Can we talk later when we've all calmed down? Sometimes we can do this, sometimes we can't. But to hold each other in compassion, to hold each other with a recognition that we don't have to accept it, and that to respond with anger, to retaliate with insult, to retaliate with blows even, is a part of the guideline for a monastic life. So for both the guests who are here training with us, like it or not, your life in community is going to make you crazy too. And that's probably why you came, right? So together we practice to that analogy of the stones banging on each other takes the rough edges off. Well, I'll tell you my observation of being here for almost going on 10 years now. It actually works. It doesn't look fun. It doesn't look pretty. But it does work. And it works even in a different kind of way. You know, we think, okay, I'm going to set this goal. We're so goal-oriented. I'm going to set this goal, and so next time somebody says something, I won't be able to speak for 30 seconds. I'll do that. Well, maybe I will, maybe I won't. But at a more subtle level over time, you see that the bumps don't happen so much. Or they do happen, and you think, oh, well, they're having a bad day. Hope they feel better. Maybe be happy. You know, it's not so personal. So, anyway, that's my somewhat disjointed thoughts given the multiple interruptions of my morning. But, you know, it was okay. I stayed cool. And I really love this story, so I hope it's of value to people.